very sad news coming in yesterday with a much-loved Central Coast man and ABC regular passing away. You might remember Brett Finneran, who, despite all of his battles with brain tumours, when he was a teenage boy, he was diagnosed with these awful, aggressive brain tumours and had very radical surgery that really changed his life, but saved his life as well. But he was so happy and positive, writing books, raising money for brain cancer, putting on events, and living a good life here on the Central Coast. His mum, Robin, called us yesterday to let us know that Brett died at the palliative care ward Elsie's Project at Gosford Hospital on Tuesday while she was holding his hand. He'd gone downhill after being diagnosed with melanoma and had been in hospital for the past 12 weeks. Robin told us Brett's brother Chris had come down from Townsville and spent 2 weeks sleeping in the same room as Brett. So in tribute to this remarkable human, we've got an interview that I did way back in 2017 with Brett, who was doing some great things to raise awareness and funds for brain cancers. Didn't call himself a cancer survivor. He called himself a brain tumourist and had such a positive attitude. We also spoke to him just late last year. He was so proud of a beautiful, beautiful children's book he'd published. And he realised, even though he had some issues with so many operations on his brain, that he could write in rhyme. And he wrote beautifully in rhyme. And it was such a fabulous book, and it'll live in memory of Brett. It was called The Adventures of Wally the Dog and Felix the Frog, and we had a great chat about it. He was so proud of it, and it was so much fun. He read some of the rhyming couplets in the book, and it was just a lovely, lovely thing. He was always doing something, and such an inspiration. And it was tragic that we lost him so young. Here's a bit of that interview that we did way back in 2017 when he was being very, very active on more research into brain cancer. My next guest is quite an extraordinary man. He wouldn't like me saying that, but he's had a lot of, how would you say it, Brett Finneran, poking around in your brain with brain tumours, diagnosed as a young boy. And you've come up with the term, you're not a brain cancer survivor, you're a brain tumourist.
Reformed brain tumourist.
Reformed brain tumourist.
A reformed brain tumourist. When I was actually diagnosed, I'd been in hospital a month before, just trying to work out what was going on. And then on the 6th of December 1988, I was diagnosed with germ-cell pinealoma, basically a couple of tumours in the middle of my brain. 5 months in hospital on some heavy-duty chemo. And I see the 10th of May when I was let out on parole as my second birthday.
Yeah. And how did they deal with it? You've got a few scars and a few reminders of it, including 2 hearing aids for a young man and whatnot. Is that to do with what they had to do?
The hearing loss, I can hear pretty well without them, but that's from the platinum in the chemo, apparently. Just bent the hairs over my ears. Yeah,
and still a few symptoms, like a bit of shaky, but you're with us. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I do have a casual case of epilepsy due to the damage done, so just when I have a full-on episode, which doesn't happen very often, but I have what they call absent seizures, and I get a bit off the air and a bit la-la sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where the tumours were in the pineal canal, it stuffed up the pituitary gland, so I don't produce a lot of the hormones. I take a lot of hormone supplements, and because I don't produce growth hormones, I can't put any on any muscle. And that gets me frustrated sometimes, particularly with the surfing.
And keeping fit, yeah.
And keeping fit in general.
So can you get an artificial pituitary gland growth hormone supplement or something? Or?
You can, but it's very expensive, so wouldn't be able to afford to do it.
Oh, it's a shame. You might need to go to see the Chinese Olympic team or something. They get plenty of it. So that's no good. I mean, that's vital to you, isn't it? That's really important.
I take other stuff called primotestin, which is a testosterone supplement, just because I have to. But that's sort of had adverse effects on the testicles. That sort of shrunk them away, but that doesn't help the muscle building.
Yeah. So the pituitary gland is in the brain, is
in
it?
The middle of my brain. That's
in the middle of the brain,
operate, yeah.
And it's not working now. It's not working properly.
So it's at the base of my brain. But
so it
doesn't work.
operate in there. Why? I mean, that raises another question, doesn't it? It's a vital drug therapy. Surely you need it.
I don't know how to put it, but I'm fortunate enough and grateful to the taxpayer because at present I'm on a disability pension, which I've been on for the last 15 years, but trying to get off it for the last 14.
Mm.
But so that enables me to get the cheaper scripts sort of thing. Otherwise, some of them are up over $100 a throw. And I've got to tell you this story because I'm dedicating the ball to, so I'll start in a minute, to my friend Annie. And when we first met, we were just having a chit-chat and it was a little bit noisy and I asked her if she could speak up a bit. And she said much the same. I couldn't help but ask why she had the hearing loss, or she asked me, one of the two first. And it turns out that she had recurring brain tumours. But we also had the same brain surgeon, Charlie Teo, who's the founder of the Cuba Brown Cancer Foundation. And unfortunately, she lived her life to every last minute. She wasn't beaten by the cancer, but succumbed to the treatment more so. After the last operation, she had half a dozen operations. So that Annie's pretty much the only person I met with brain tumours. She ended up having a baby.
Wow.
I'm surprised I haven't started tears yet. No, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
She's an absolute champion. Rather than calling my episode a journey, I call it an adventure.
An adventure.
An adventure, yep.
Yeah.
But as you said, I was diagnosed when I was 15, and so I didn't end up going on to do my HSC, even though I was already enrolled in classes, etc.
Where were you at school, Brett?
I went to school at St Edward's.
Yeah.
And then I was enrolled to go at Corpus Christi up at Tuggerah.
And you couldn't get there because of the brain cancer. Yeah. What about the symptoms as a 15-year-old? Because kids can be a bit cruel and things. Yeah. And were there things happening that, once it was explained, I guess there'd be a few kids who'd feel a bit bad if they said bad things to you or whatever, knowing that why things were happening to you.
About midway through year 10, I started to struggle with my schoolwork, and apparently I was coming home from school each day with a headache, going to bed. Mum thought I had diabetes because I was going to the toilet a lot and drinking a lot and getting tired easy.
Yeah.
And we saw about 4 or 5 doctors. They said it was just my age, like you're talking about then. And finally come across the one who said it was a drama. And he sent me to an endocrinologist, and he put me on stuff called prednisone, which is basically a general hormone, I think. And that made my head swell up, and a mate of mine was calling me helium head all the time.
Oh, dear.
And finally...
I bet he feels a bit bad about that when you were diagnosed with brain tumours.
Well, no, I was proud of it.
You're irrepressible. You got a good sense of humour.
But my sense of humour is what kept me alive, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
My dad was working in Sydney, and I was treated at RPA. If I was asleep, he'd come in, stick his fingers up my nose, or wake me up, or make me my ears. But I was lucky I could laugh at myself in that regard.
Just an absolute inspiration. Brett Finneran sadly passing away at the age of 50 with cancer, but not the brain cancer, due to melanoma, which is so sad. He was just such a fighter, such a wonderful bloke, and wrote a beautiful book. I don't know if you can get a copy of it. We might have to talk to Robin, his mum, who let us know that he'd lost his battle there. But the Adventures of Wally the Dog and Felix the Frog, and it's just a beautiful children's book. He's just such a giver, Brett. There was never woe me. He just was such a fighter and such a giver and such an inspirational bloke. So our thoughts are with Brett Finneran's family this week after the news that he passed away at Elsie's place. Speaking of Elsie's project too, Peter Hurley, a shout out to Peter, one of the hard-working volunteers that got that place up and running. Boy, they had to fight tooth and nail to create that amazing space for people on their final journey. Peter's been diagnosed with cancer, and he's on that journey as well. So our thoughts are with you too, Peter. Paying tribute to the volunteers today here at ABC Central Coast, and